I just started the recording.
Recorded live.
You guys, as we're saying, what we've done here is we've enabled people to come on board and talk. And what I'm going to do from the very beginning is I've been promising this to people. Many people have helped me figure this out. I'm going to give an email out. And when you go ahead and just take down this email, and when you say, just type hello from your email, it will auto-respond right back to you, and it'll give you every single document of everything we've ever discussed templated, i.e. the abatement process, which, Sam, I'd really like to see you implement, the PSQ process, which, Sam, I'd really like to see you implement, all the way down to bonds, promissory notes, FOIAs, we're going to land patents, invoicing and billing. All these things are there. So I'm going to give you this email right now, folks. Go there. From your email, just type hello, and you'll get back an auto response with every single document templated, ready to go for every issue we've ever discussed. That includes as well the 1099A, 1096 process with the pre-05 mortgages, and then the default procedure with the FinCEN 100 and the 3949A to default on the mortgage procedure. So everything's there templated for you. So having Sam here is kind of cool because I'd really like to talk to Sam about what his process is going to be and hopefully go back and forth on that. But mainly go and look at those docs in the next day or so, get them all. You guys can change them at your will. They are simply templated. They must meet your intent. They're just templates. So next week we'll really get into discussing those. But here's the email, folks. I'm going to go real slow. It's N as in Nancy, M as in Michael, R as in Roger, P as in Paul, H as in Henry, S as in Samuel, @gmail.com. So I'll go over that one more time. N as in Nancy, M as in Michael, R as in Roger, P as in Paul, H as in Henry, S as in Samuel, @gmail.com. So when you go there and just from your email and say hello, it will give an automatic response with links to every single document that we've ever discussed. And I tested it many times today, so if it doesn't work, I'm going to be really upset. But anyways, it should work.
Mike?
Yes.
This is Steve. Can you remind people to mute out again? Tell them to start the.
Yeah, guys.
On Skype, if you're using Skype and you're not talking, either disconnect your microphone, mute your microphone, but, we need to hear Mike speak clearly, and then you can always start 6 if you want to come back on the call.
Yeah, guys, do that, please. Everyone, if you're not talking, I want to specifically leave Sam on, and I want to go back and forth. I think this is going to be a great learning experience for a lot of you guys, and hopefully we can mix it up because you've got some good minds on this phone. So the bottom line is, Sam, tell us a little bit about what they did. How'd they come in and what they do to you, man?
Well, it was really kind of surreal. Hang on just a second. Let me readjust here. I had been waiting for this meeting to take place for about 3 months, and Sean Rice and I had brought Sean into this to assist me, and I'm not going to talk a lot about Sean other than to say that he was also there and also arrested, but I kind of consider my fault because I brought him into the deal. But anyway, when I walked in the hotel room and began to get settled, side door
Hello?
up and forfeit it.
Can't hear them, Cub.
Hey, Sam, hey, guys, stop talking, please. Sam, can you speak up a little? We lost you a little bit. I don't know how, but we lost you.
I just noticed my microphone was pulled out.
Okay, guys.
And everybody that is not talking, please mute start 6.
All right, I'm going to hold on, everybody. You know what? I can do it here. I'm mute. Well, then it'll make me mute Sam. Everybody must mute out. Folks, if you're ever going to learn, now's the time. You've got somebody who's a seasoned gentleman who knows his stuff. Let's go ahead and be respectful. Sam's been, gracious enough to get on the call. Mute out. Star 6. All right, Sam, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, when I went into the hotel room, well, they came in the side door with 4 or 5 of them with guns and placed me under arrest. And I said, first thing I asked is, when they handed me the arrest warrant, I said, where's the order for the warrant? And they said, we don't know what that is. And I said, well, sure you do. I said, every warrant has to have an order for it. Well, we have an indictment. And I said, well, where's it? You may very well have an indictment, but where's the order for the warrant? And anyway, they just said, well, this is all you get. And they didn't even hand me the indictment at that time. I didn't get it for a day till I got to court. But anyway, my undercover agent friend walked up and informed me that it was in my best interest of me and my family for me to cooperate with these folks and that were going to interview me and so anyway we all sat down, and of course I'm a diabetic, and I got to tell you they treated me like a gold brick.
You think they may have been a little concerned, the ones other than the ones who purported all this?
Well, it was interesting. The lady that interviewed me, the first thing she said to me is, Mr. Davis, I got one thing that I need to say to you. And I said, okay, what's that? And she says, I have nothing personal against you. This is just business.
Oh, commerce, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So now, without an indictment or a warrant, I mean, what was there? Obviously, Sam, with all your information, your seminars, your website. I mean, where were they going? I mean, do you perceive that they really want to bring this into the corporate court system, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I've thought a lot about that, and of course, with the press that they've put out and the way that they've publicized this, there's no turning back for them. One of my friends that they also arrested, I've known him for 3 or 4 years, is a 25-year former agent of the FBI. And he was arrested on willful failure to file and tax evasion, and that is totally in retaliation for participating in Aaron Russo's film.
Sure.
And then Harold, I just talked to Harold earlier today. Harold's never done anything to anybody. And these same 2 undercover agents befriended him unbeknownst to me at all, other than I heard the things like they were going out and looking at property to buy a shooting range. And the one guy was representing himself as a yacht owner, owning 12 yachts around the world that he rented out, had pictures of them, and he wore all kinds of gold necklaces and gold rings every meeting that he came to, and they got Harold to they called him up one day and said, hey, would you like to go shooting out on the desert? And this was a year or so ago, maybe more, and he said, well, sure, I love to shoot. He's a competition shooter for years, 40 years. He's got ribbons, trophies, the whole thing. And so anyway, they started going out to the desert, and one day they went out to the desert, and they get out of the car, and they got 2 AK-47s. And they said to Harold, you ever shot one of these? And he said, no, I never have. And, he's been in Korea and in Vietnam, and so anyway, they shot the AKs, and here a while back, they showed up to go shooting, and one of the guns didn't work. One of the machine guns that they brought didn't work, and so they hand it to Harold and say, "What do you think about this? What's wrong with it?" Knowing that Harold knows his way around a gun pretty well, and he said, "Well, this little part right here is broke." He says, "You'll have to order one of these from such and such." Oh man, we don't want to do that. He said, well, it's really no big deal. He says, all you need to do is this, this, and this, and you can make this part. Well, how about doing that for us? And so the other day they brought up a machine gun and picked him up to go shooting. And so they take him out to the Speedway restaurant there by the racetrack north of Vegas. and he's met there by about 15 agents, and they place him under arrest for manufacturing machine gun parts. And in the meantime, while they're arresting him out at the Speedway, there's 45 agents appear at his house where no one's home, block off all the streets, and make a big show of standing out in front of his house with a megaphone ordering him to come out.
Unbelievable. So, Sam, let me ask you, because this is going to be important for a lot of people on this call, because I've been in a similar situation. I've been shackled and accosted by about 9 of them in one shot. Signatures, autographs. When you were there, obviously under threatened arrest, being unlawfully. Folks, go ahead and mute out *6. *6 if you're not speaking, please. *6 if you're not speaking, please. Obviously, knowing what you know going in there, there's things that are going to take place in the commercial side. You know that they've got to set a bond in place. So how did you handle that? Did you sign anything? If you did, was there any procedures you took there?
I signed every document they gave me, and I accepted every document they gave me for value.
Okay, so you accepted for value, which is fair and good. But so are you saying you signed them in your full capacity as a living soul, or did you sign them in any specific way?
I just signed my name across it, or wherever they wanted me to sign it, and I wrote accepted for value across it. And
now,
when I had time, I dated it and I put my employer ID number on it. And actually, I even put a couple of them exempt from levy.
Now, during the supposed arraignment with the black robe commercial judge, what was the process there? How'd that work for you?
Let me take the liberty of. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can. You guys, somebody's messing. You guys, take heed to what's going on. There's a lot of side noise going on. If you're not talking, hit *6. If you're on Skype, don't have it on speaker. Be respectful, folks. Come on.
Hey, Mike.
Go ahead, Sam. Yes.
Mike.
Yes, Steve.
Could you just mute everybody out and have Sam hit *8 and bring him in?
I can do that, Sam. Is that what we want to do? Let's do that. I can mute everybody. I just didn't know how to get Sam back. So, Sam, you hear that? I'm going to mute everybody, and then, Sam, will you go ahead and hit *8?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
I'll cue him up, and you can bring him in.
All righty. Sam, if you're going to next in queue, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to see what this does here. I can hear you, Sam. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's a lot better. There's no crackling going on.
Awesome. Okay, because we're going to do this thing, Sam, because I'm going to tell you, at the end of the day here, I've been in, Sam, I'm going to give you a little background, then I'm going to let you finish. I took a case to U.S. Supreme under abatement, Article 9 versus the 14th Amendment, and 70 days I got it there. I ran it, I exhausted all remedies and got there because this is going to work. Me and you are going to be able to come up with some scenarios where we're going to wax wise, my friend, and we're going to find the best possible scenario. From that, because of the things that I taught, they attempted 4 grand juries. Through those grand juries, I learned some extremely powerful concepts, i.e., that abatement is what got me my victory by dismissal at U.S. Supreme. Then it was the PSQ, and then it was Federal Rules of Evidence 201 and 902, self-authenticating affidavits. Those 3 right there documents destroyed 4 grand juries, which was deemed a mockery of the justice system by the end. So I want you to walk through your scenario, what happened in the court scene, and then this is going to be a really good call because in the end, I want to hear about your procedure, how you think you're going to best end this, and I'm going to implant what I think, and we're just going to go at it, and this is going to be a good call. So just go ahead and tell whatever you want about your story, and keeping in mind, the folks on this call, most of them may be put in scenarios like this, so we want to give them our best. We want to, give them the, how did you feel, what did it smell like, give them the whole 5 senses story about what really happened in there, because Sam, as you and I both know, fear is the only thing that lets them have their victory, because it's not a difficult process to do what you're about to do. It's just a matter of spiritually getting rid of the fear and then moving forward. So go ahead and tell us about everything that happened.
All right. Well, you're number one, you are exactly correct about that. The whole entire time, I was totally calm. at one point in time after the immediate arrest, about an hour, hour and a half into the conversation, they got up to get me a bottle of water and take a break, and I said, I would like to call my wife. And the lady says, you can't do that right now. And it dawned on me that they were at my house here in Idaho. And I said, you're at my house, aren't you? And she said, yes, we are. And I said, well, I only have one thing to ask you. She says, what's that? And I says, did you kick down my door? And she says, I have no idea. I'm not there. And so I found out late Friday night when we finally were released at about 11:15. I think they held us that long because the media was outside waiting for us. And when we got out there, they had finally given up. It was after the news hour, I guess. But anyway, I'll just tell you what they did at my house. They came at 8:30 in the morning. My wife was upstairs and thought that it was just our friends coming up the driveway. It was a blinding snowstorm and a 30-mile-an-hour wind. And she heard a knock on the door. She hollered, come in. And the next thing she heard was what sounded like an explosion as they battering rammed the door. And 25 of them and a SWAT team under the heading of the FBI agent in charge, whose business card says WMD Coordinator and Joint Terrorism Task Force, which is exactly what they are. They have a task force that joins together to create terrorism. Smoke bombed, threw 2 smoke bombs in my house, handcuffed my wife and then put her on the couch and then proceeded to treat her very nicely. All of this without a warrant for 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Okay. They said they had a warrant on the premises, but after her asking for it all morning, as they were leaving, they handed it to her. And so anyway, they didn't get anything. They got her computer, which has nothing on it except, her email, and maybe a dozen of my documents that I never use. I only put them on her computer so I could print them off. And some old research papers that and 3 or 4 current cases that I'm working on for other people. So the most traumatic thing for me of the whole ordeal was, just not knowing what was going on with my wife. Was my 16-year-old son in the house, blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, he was at school. So of all of the ordeal, that was the most traumatic. And once I got to a jail cell, I was able to use a phone and call a friend in Vegas who would call my wife, and we were able to have kind of a 3-party conversation. So, but other than that, I was perfectly calm the entire time. I will tell you that even by yourself in a jail cell, with the bright lights on, it's very difficult to sleep, and I got very tired. But they took very good care of me medically. They took the food was horrible, and of course, you just feel like fasting and praying anyway. So that's not
right. So, and obviously they paint the picture. I used to be into, structuring non-public trust. So, everything you read on the websites and whatnot have nothing to do with reality. You read the indictments are never about what they put in the fine print out there all over the news media. It never has anything to do with what the indictment actually says. Have you seen any paperwork? What is their claim?
Well, the claim against me is 31 counts of money laundering.
Talk about that. What are they saying there? Obviously money laundering is a broad brush they can use for anything, but what specifically, let's do this because, it's a good time for you because I know it's crap just because I know how they work. They talked about you negotiating instruments from old checks and whatnot. Talk a little bit about that.
No. See, that's the fallacy of the thing. The only thing that I did is they set up a company, and I just assumed it was their company. That company wired my company funds and over the course of a week, I would wire those funds to another company, and I would take a fee for that. And that's all I did. Everything else they did. Okay? And that is the God's honest truth. The only thing I did is when money came into my account, I moved it to another account. They say that they lost $1.29 million, which is a bald-faced lie. Every dime less my fee, let's just say this, every dime less fees that were agreed upon and contracted for were returned. And in no uncertain way, it was a wire transfer.
So that's a pretty bold claim for them to make out in the open like that. That's desperation is what it is. But it's a pretty bold claim for them to make that you were moving checks and whatnot, as they stated. I mean,
never touched a check. Never, ever touched a check. Never touched a check. The other thing, and why I'm talking about this, and a lot of people will say, well, why are you, admitting to this? Well, there's one thing if you're gonna go on the premise that we are responsible and we are sovereigns, I'm going to take absolute responsibility for my actions. Okay, with no hesitation or question, I'm going to do that, because the worst possible thing that you can do here is lie. Okay, because then you have no integrity whatsoever. The aspect of what I did, I let my better judgment go by the wayside for the opportunity to basically, for all intents and purposes, rob the bank. And because I had big plans that of all the things that we could do to help people and all of the projects that would do good for people in my mind, and that was all I was looking at. And so I got sucked in pretty good. Well, but to tell the story of the court procedure, which is to me the most important thing, I need to back up 2 months to January, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because, everybody that knows me knows what I do with acceptance for value, and they know pretty much that that's pretty much all I do. And in Las Vegas, from years ago, I had a fellow built me back in 2001. He built me a replica of a judge's bench and background. And so we have that set up in our meeting room down in Las Vegas. And we would hold what we called moot court sessions, where people could come and practice going to court, which is a great idea. And so anyway, in the January meeting, the middle of the month, we decided on Sunday that we would do a couple hours of this practicing in court. And so I was playing the role of the judge, and a friend of mine was playing the role of the prosecutor, who knows his way around the legal system. And so then we asked for volunteers from the audience to come up and just role play through just simple arraignments. Well, this fellow from Hawaii, and I got to tell you, guys, folks, this guy is brilliant. As far as I'm concerned, he has completed my process of acceptance for value of what I do. And so he stepped up, and we were role-playing, and I said, I'm going to ask you to enter a plea. And he says, Your Honor, he says, I object. And I said, well, what's your objection, sir? And he says, Your Honor, there's been no ratification of commencement in this matter. And I just stopped dead. I looked at the audience, I looked at him, and I said, I have no idea what he just did, but I want to know all about it. And so for the next 20 minutes, he explained it. Ratification of commencement is a phrase that comes out of Rule 17 in the Federal Rules or State Rules of Civil Procedure, real parties in interest. And it says that every case shall be brought in the name of the real party in interest, and no case shall be dismissed for not bringing the action in the name of the real party in interest until such time after objection that the ratification of commencement is brought forward. Well, folks, I got to tell you that is the critical issue to do you have a claim against me?
Sam, let me say about that. Sam, is this gentleman's name Ward that you're talking about?
No.
Okay. Because I read, I don't know if it's the same as the one you read, but I've read one. It was basically titled a verified notice of caveat via request for ratification of commencement with affidavit in support. I read through this. I'm telling you something. This, in line with an abatement, is a double-edged sword that they're not going to be able to handle.
Well, a fellow sent me your paperwork last night and said, Sam, you got to get on this call. And as I read through the paperwork that evidently you did that he sent me, I said, this is hand in glove.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm in the process right now. I started this afternoon. I wrote for about an hour. But by Friday, I'm going to put out on the Internet pleadings and explanation for ratification of commencement and acceptance, or do you have a claim against me, for the entire world, for every situation and every case in the United States.
May I say about that, Sam? I'm going to tell you a little bit about some history that I have. My partner, meaning friend, I'm married to a woman, but my partner, a good buddy of mine, was a grand jury court reporter trainer and reported at U.S. Supreme. Many years ago, we took the position that you don't plead with your servants, that you respectfully demand. So this is good, because this is what I wanted to do with you once I heard you were on the call. You know, I read what I read here on the, it may not be yours, but in other words, it starts off on the commencement with an affidavit. It's request. Okay, very good. So I'll use this. I'll say, love what's inside of it. Love the way it all sounds. But uses certain words that I would certainly, and we can become crisp and precise together, that I would stay far away from. And it's only because my good friend who was a grand jury court reporter trainer had that insight into their world right there, making requests, things like this, respectfully demanding, you know. All those things, I'd like to walk through your docs with you and just really talk about that with you one-on-one, because those are the things, you know, when we petition the court, we don't ever want to do that. We respectfully demand everything from our servants, and we've styled all of our documentation that way. So these little things that I know you know about, but that's where this call becomes very powerful, because we talk about those things. That abatement, along with what you have here, what you wrote, is so precise that the only thing I can see you having to do after you implement those two is one position. Whatever they send forth, accepted, you do your accepted for value language, and then I add on there, plaintiff waives right to amend writ. And I think you're done. I think you are done. And here's the thing, folks, listening to this call. That seems too easy, but it's only fear that would make you enter in any more than that. It's only fear that's going to make you enter in any more than that, because going back to the basics of, I know what my mama named me, and I'm going to abate, beat down, and when one ruling case law tells me that when I abate and beat down this issue, plaintiff may amend his writ to my proper spelling of my honest name, and he refuses to do so, he has waived his right to amend writ. Therefore, it is not me plaintiff is seeking. So now, when dragged into court under threatened arrest, unlawfully detained, we get to say, Sam, Judge, I have an abatement on this case. May I take anything you say as a granting of the abatement? And number two, if forced to speak under contempt of court, you're suborning perjury, Judge. And then you do what Messiah did. You do what's in your heart to do, because we're done here.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the things that it's Mike, right?
Yes.
Okay. Here's one of the things that I have always focused on, and the reason that I have never ever left the acceptance issue, and that is that if this isn't simple, I can't do it. Okay. And I'm not saying that I'm dumb or ignorant. I'm just saying that if it isn't simple, I don't do it. And I got to tell you a little bit more about this ratification deal. If you go on Google and you type in ratification of commencement, you will find in the first 4 hits Wells Fargo Bank versus Byrd, I believe it is. And in there, it explains that Wells Fargo Bank lost in a foreclosure case because they did not have the note and they could not produce a ratification of commencement or proof of claim.
Very good. I mean, to me, it's a 1-2 punch, man. It's like, Sam, I don't know if you've ever implemented, but another powerful thing we discussed on this call that I think is something you may want to consider is there's 2 things. One that we haven't even discussed on this call that I'm going to bring out. You probably already know about most of this, Sam, but let's do this for the ones who may not know. Federal Rules of Evidence 201 and 902 talk about self-authenticating documents. If I want to go and put in a PSQ, in other words, we talked about it on our last call, Sam. Congress gets to know the servant before the servant gets to know you. And the reason we talk about that is because we know that we believe on this call, I think, because everybody keeps coming back, the Constitution was written for the servant as their rule book. We know that it had to be billed by a Bill of Rights to let them know, hey, the reason this Constitution didn't discuss rights because it was written for you and not us. However, because you're getting a little out of line, let's go ahead and talk about the enumerated rights of the people. Well, if Congress were by the people for the people would have, in protecting the other people, made sure that when a public servant came to question one of the people had the right to question the servant first. And there's 21 prescribed congressional laws that support that position. So the bottom line is whoever you're dealing with right now, that PSQ template, going forth under the premise that you have the right, when you're taking the risk of dealing with government, you have the right to ascertain that they stay within the bounds of their authority. That PSQ going forward immediately, where they have to answer under 21 prescribed congressional statutes, is a humdinger because it puts them in a position of high misdemeanors and felonies within 10 days, and you alert your congressman by CCing them. By CCing them, you get to alert your congressman that this U.S. attorney, this U.S. attorney, this U.S. attorney, this FBI agent, this DOJ agent has been given a PSQ. I want you to open a file and let me know when they respond. And when they don't respond, they've again high misdemeanors and felonies, and now the congressman is on the hook. So once that's done, and along with your document, your ratification document with the abatement, those go behind an affidavit into the public record. And when you have the language of 201 and 902 of Federal Rules of Evidence, all those documents going in as they are, recorded in public records, sent to all parties involved on the other side, in 30 days, all future matters are unrebuttable. It's self-authenticating. They can't move. They can't move. You've got such a powerful foundation and that everything's outside of the judge's record. He cannot go into public record and abrogate or tortiously interfere or violate his oath. And you've got self-authenticating evidence. You've got violated PSQs. So like I've always tried to tell people, Sam, everything we do with 20 grand jurors in mind. Mr. U.S. Attorney, before you start talking about me, who's been dragged in here unlawfully, let's talk about how you violated 21 congressional laws. Anybody here on the jury want to see it? And that exculpatory evidence, as you build that, becomes powerful, extremely powerful. So I throw those things in with what you're thinking. Come back at me now, Sam, and tell me what you think about that and how you may amend what I just said.
I've seen in the years past the public servant questionnaire. 10 years ago, in the site draft issues that I was involved with, they tried to indict me, and they tried to get me in front of a grand jury. They changed my name 6 times. the federal judge issued a defective order, but the thing that triggered that's very similar to that was a document that a friend of mine helped me create called a motion for more definite statement. And I was able to ask questions in that, because I never make statements, I always ask questions. And I was able to say to the U.S. Attorney and the grand jury, until my questions are answered, I won't be answering any of yours. And that served me very well. I actually had an FBI agent several months after the defective order. What the defective order was is that the judge ordered me to appear at the federal building to give handwriting exemplars and fingerprints to the FBI and Secret Service, and then he ordered that order sealed. And they actually sent this order to me in my venue with my name in upper and lowercase, in care of my address in upper and lowercase, and Boise, Idaho in upper and lowercase, and no zip code.
Mm-hmm.
And they induced me to open this envelope. And I open it up, and there's an order to the straw man. And this order is all well and good. There's only one problem. There's no date and time to do this. And, of course, you know, I always do my English construction test, who, what, when, where, why, and how much.
Right.
And that's when I found that there was no when. And they wanted me to call and voluntarily come down there. And so when several months go by and I haven't called, the deputy sheriff in the county that we lived in at the time shows up at the house with a car trailing behind him with an FBI agent and a Secret Service agent. And, you know, I'm gone to Seattle for a meeting, and I call the FBI office and leave a message to call me back in 2 days when I get home. And at the appointed time, the phone rings when I'm back, and they want me to still voluntarily come down and do this. And I said, well, I don't think I'll be volunteering. And the statement is made, well, you realize that you're under court order, don't you? And I said, well, I know that there's an order, but with all due respect to the judge, I believe that order is defective. And the FBI agent says, you're exactly correct. Do you realize there wasn't even a date and time for you to do this? And then she said the most important thing that any federal agent's ever said to me. Sam, let me ask you a question. Okay. Sam, if we have this hearing, will you grant the judge jurisdiction?
Very interesting.
And, of course, I said, no, I won't. So, you know, for years they've gone on the if they wanted to talk to me, they sent out a sheriff to come and knock on my door and ask if I would come and talk to them. And for years I've asked, do they have a piece of paper compelling me? And they've said no. And I said, I'm not talking to them. And so as this whole thing transpired with this ratification, and the fellow that you're talking about that ratification is written for is in South Dakota and goes to court tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Is he? Now let me ask you something, Sam. Why? Here's what's gonna be different from the approaches I've ever taken. Compelled to go in, fearful in going in, wants to go in. Why is he going in? Well, in the first place, he doesn't have a clue.
Okay. He's a minister. He and his wife and his son. Evidently, in South Dakota, there's a law that taxes labor and services, and he formed an LLC and some other things, and they demanded that he get a sales tax license and pay sales tax, which he had never done, and they not only charged him with some failure to do something, but they actually raided his home and put he and his wife and his son in jail for 3 days. When they went to court, he got to court, and there was an arrest warrant that he be arrested and brought to the courthouse, and he was already at the courthouse. And
at least they're organized.
What?
At least they're organized.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, in this entire affair, and I don't even remember exactly how they came to me, but I've been speaking with them and assisting them and helping them with their paperwork, and a couple of people had done a fairly good job of creating a affidavit of negative averment and something else it was called, and the first indictment against them was dismissed when they filed that affidavit, but they refiled another affidavit later that afternoon, or another indictment against them. So tomorrow they go to court on the ratification of commencement document, and I don't, as I coached them today, when they're, if somebody says that they're going to proceed against you, and you ask them, "May I have your name, please? Do you have a claim against me?" and they say, they have to say no. If they say that they do, then you ask, "Well, do you have the ratification of commencement then?" If you injure someone, they have the ability to create a ratification of commencement in a claim that you actually have to take care of. But the state will never allow that, because the state's going to step in and state the claim, especially in a criminal matter. But in my research, and I'm perfectly willing to go over word for word the document. I'm not saying that I have it correctly. I'm saying I have the concept correctly.
Yeah, no, that I see. That's why when I read this today, I'm like, you know what? The way I always look at everything, Sam, is whether or not it would kill an abatement procedure. In other words, at the end of the day, I talked to a gentleman today who told me he put an abatement in, and I said, "Send it to me." And then he said, "But my lawyer." And I said, What? I said, abatement and lawyer are diametrically opposed.
Exactly.
So when I was looking at this, the bottom line to it is that it doesn't go against it. I think though, this document is more for somebody who's going to enter in. Again, the last case, well, there's been many. It's going to be real interesting, Sam, to see which stance you take, because you got to let folks. For those of you who know, Sam's been in the game a long time. I've been in the game quite a while. When it comes face to face to you like this, everything you can talk about when it's somebody else's life, all of a sudden things can be clear, but maybe not so clear. So, Sam, what I want to say is, look at that abatement, because at the end of the day, I can't see any problem with using both documents. However, going under respectful demand, sending them in and having them served upon the court and everybody, nailing down those PSQs, and anything they send back, just like you said, accepted for value, and the second sentence right below it, plaintiff waives right to amend writ and never leave your house. I mean, that is certainly the position I would take if I were in your position, somebody from the outside looking in who's been in that situation, because there's no need to do so. And if dragged in unlawfully, you get to say whatever the judge speaks out of his, and I'll use my friend's word, face hole, you get to say, "May I take that as a granting of the abatement?" And what we can do is take that right all the way up the ladder, exhausting all remedies with a mandamus or a prohibition. Watch this, folks. There is no merits on which to rule on matters of abatement. There is none. There's only one decision they can make: amend the writ. If they amend the writ not, you get to take a mandamus right up to the next court in 10 days, mandating a ruling on matters of abatement. If that court rules not, and it has no merits which to do, you get to take a mandamus right to the state supreme, and that can, whatever state you're in. If that court rules not in 10 days, you get to take a mandamus right to U.S. Supreme.
Well, here's and all that, Mike, is I don't dispute you in any way, shape, or form. I'm looking at this from the perspective that the ratification of commencement kills it before it ever goes anywhere.
Listen, I'm loving that. If you're saying that with all your experience, I'm gonna reread this thing like 10. So again, I see it here. Tell me why again. Go through it one more time, because maybe I'm even missing it. What is the link here? You're saying, in other words, it's saying before you get started, you can't start because of what?
There's only one form of action, and that's a civil action. That's rule number one. Okay.
Okay.
We know that all crime is commercial, therefore it's a claim.
Title 27.
Okay. the next step is that in commerce or in life, everything that you're given is an offer. The indictment that they gave me was an offer waiting to be negotiated. All right? It says right on the back page, a true bill. So it's waiting to be negotiated. So in the first place, they're alleging that someone somewhere is injured and has a claim. Somehow or another, my activities injured someone. Who, I have no idea. So my first obligation is to go in and find out who has the claim. And so when the judge calls my name, and we go through that routine, and then he begins to speak, and I say, "Excuse me, Your Honor, I object." And he says, "And what is your objection?" And I says, "Well, first of all, I'm going to object because I'm entitled to know the nature and cause of this action." And he says, "Well, this is a criminal indictment for money laundering." I said, "Very well, now I'm going to object again." And he says, "What's your objection?" And I said, "My objection, sir, is that there is no ratification of commencement in this matter." And he looks at me and he says, "I have no idea what that is." And I said, "Well, Your Honor, I'm going to indulge him here this time." And I say, "Well, Your Honor," I said, it's Rule 17, real parties in interest." And he says, "Are you talking about the rules of civil procedure?" I says, "I certainly am." "Well, this is a criminal matter." I said, "Your Honor, there's only one form of action, and that's a civil action." "Well, we'll take that matter up later." And I said, "Your Honor, for the record, please note my objection." And he says, "So noted," which nullifies everything thereafter. And because he hasn't taken up my objection, he's noted it for the record. All right? So then he proceeds on, and then he says, "I'm going to enter a plea of not guilty." And I said, "Your Honor, I accept that and this entire matter for value." And he looks at me again, and he says, "I have no idea what you're talking about." I said, "Your Honor, I'm not here to tell you the law." And so then he says, "Very well," and then he says, "Counsels, are we ready to proceed with detention?" And the U.S. Attorney stands up and reads a statement that could come off of the Southern Poverty Law Association website, or the Militia Watchdog, or the ADL, or whoever, and it just sounds stupid while he's standing there reading it. And he says that I'm a flight risk, and I'm this, and I'm that, and that I'm not going to appear in court because I'm not going to recognize the jurisdiction of the court, and I'm a flight risk, and I'm the national leader of the anti-government movement, and blah, blah, blah. And so I had before we started all this, they sent a young lady that was a representative of the Federal Public Defender's Office to visit with me, and she says, "Well, I know that you'll probably want to do this, but I'm just going to stand there." And I said, "You can stand there if you want. I don't care, but you're not going to speak unless I tell you you can speak." She said, "That's fine." So anyway, I'd handled pretty much the whole thing up to there, and so on the detention hearing, she grabs my arm and she says, "Let me handle part of this." And I said, "Okay, I just want you to know I want to speak." So the U.S. Attorney does his thing, and then she says, "Your Honor, Pretrial Services has recommended that Mr. Davis be released not only immediately, but without any restrictions whatsoever." And a couple other things, and then she said, "And Mr. Davis has something he'd like to say." And so I began to speak, and I said, "Your Honor, the only thing I have in life is my integrity, and if I give you my word that I'll be here, I'll be here. I'm not going to back away from this, Your Honor. I'm not a flight risk. I've never had a passport, never even applied for a passport. And I give you my word that if you schedule a hearing and I'm properly notified, I'll be here." And he looks at me and he says, "I believe you will." And the U.S. Attorney pipes up and says something, 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 and the judge says, "The man gave me his word and I believe him." And I leaned into the microphone and I said, Your Honor, I believe that's a meeting of the minds. He says, I believe it is as well. And I says, and then, Your Honor, I believe that's a contract. He says, absolutely, I think you're right. And he ordered me released.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. So, hey, listen, let me ask you a question, and this is because I got a funny sense of humor. Are you using the same cell phone that you've carried with you for the past several years on this call?
No, they have.
I was going to say, because I was going to welcome all of our unwanted friends onto the call and tell them we love you, public servants. We are pro-government because the government is we the people. If you need anything from us, just let us know. If you try and rob us of our rights, you're doing it to your own children, and that's my little disclaimer. But we love you, servants. We love you.
Well,
go ahead.
I kind of told him. The same thing. I said, when you diminish my rights, you just diminish your rights.
That's right. That's exactly right. Sam, I went to see a friend who's on this call. He was being held and never charged for many, many, many days, abused, beaten. So I walk into a court proceeding and sitting in the back taking notes. At the time, I was doing some radio stuff. And towards the end, of course, because he was standing firm in his position, he was the last to go, stood very firm, did very well. And as I was leaving the building, I hear all these feet scurrying from around me. And all of a sudden, within 10 minutes of that, without knowing me, asking my name, but me not giving it, I was shackled and handcuffed and without a warrant or indictment or knowing my name and taken into a back room and staring at all of them saying, when you do this to me, guys, you're doing it to your children. And you could see the shame in their eyes. So not all of them are, I used to say rogue. Some of them just, it's their job, they're feeding their kids, they kind of just suck it up and they don't, I'm sure, though, in their conscience, there's going to be a catch-up time where it all comes back around on them,
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you what happened in Hawaii.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got to tell you what happened in Hawaii the week after the fella came to our meeting in Las Vegas and told us about ratification of commencement. And he called me on the phone, and he had already sent me a couple of his pleadings and documents, but he called me on the phone and he says, "You're not going to believe what's going on over here." And I says, "What's that?" And he says, "Well, the marshals just picked up a friend of mine who had a warrant issued against him in federal court on a six-figure IRS case back in December. The warrant was issued, and they picked him up and they had him down at the jail, and they were going to move him." He says, "I think they were going to move him to San Francisco." And he says, "I took this one-paragraph ratification of commencement document down and filed it in the court. And within 2 hours, the federal judge had filed a hearing had held a hearing on an emergency hearing and recalled the warrant. And they took him downtown and released him at a convenience store on the street."
Wow. So we got another powerful tool there. Hey, Steve from Texas, can two people *8 and get on this? I don't know how this works on TalkShoe, but Steve, see if you can come in. I don't know if you can or can't. I don't know how this works. Maybe somebody will. I've got a next in queue thing. Maybe I got to click that. Steve, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Sam, can I still hear you then? Sam, you there? You know what it did? It muted out Sam, though. That's a bummer. Okay, I'm gonna take the risk here of unmuting everybody, folks. If you would just simply *6 right now, because I'm gonna unmute because I want to do a little back and forward here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the risk here. Here we go. Let's see how this works. Somebody's got their radio on.
Yeah, you're saying the *6 option's not available.
Dad.
You know what? I don't know if this is going to work. That was a bad thing I just did, I think. Well, now I don't know how to mute everybody. It's not letting me mute. Yeah, boy, I apologize, folks, that I just did that. I want to...
How'd you get everybody?
Now it's not letting me mute. I don't understand.
Have everyone call back then.
Conference call, you guys. Sorry, folks. Now it's not letting me mute. I don't know why it's doing this all of a sudden. Hold on, folks. Bear with me. I'm just trying to do Now it just hung me up. Hello? Hung me up.
Mike?
Hello? Okay, everybody. I don't know where the music's coming from, though. Bummer. Hey, Sam, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
For some reason, though, okay. It looks like we got everybody muted out again. Sam, are you back with me? Unbelievable. I don't know what happened there. Oh, wow. That's nice. Sam, can you hit *8 again? Sam, hit *8 again.
Are we going to talk a little bit about?
Sam, you there? Guys, the problem I'm having, I don't know if you guys can hear me, is TalkShoe is not letting me hit buttons at all. So hold on a second. Wow, that stinks. Yeah, I muted everybody, but I'm trying to get Sam, hit *8 again if you can. I've got 1,000 people telling me they can hear me on Skype.
Are you there?
Is that you, Sam?
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, that was a bummer. I tried to get Steve on because I wanted to go into some other things, but me being a rookie at this stuff, I don't want to mess it up like that again. That's a bummer. That's going to be a bummer for the recording for everybody. But anyways, okay. The reason I wanted Steve to talk was on the main premise of you. Tell me your experience with the Steve and I have been talking a lot about lately. I'm sure you've heard of Gene Keating's prison bond treaties over the years and those types of things.
Well, yeah, I've heard of them. I've heard. Let me just say this. I've heard a lot of things. I've never seen anything that worked.
Beautiful. That's my type of deal. That's where I'm at with it, and I agree with that. I've seen abatement work many, many times, actually every time, for those who have stood on it and not let the fear grip them. So at the end of the day, however, there are some pretty powerful concepts, and I'll go over some with you. And because I can't get Steve to talk about them as well, some people are just stuff to consider and take in as well. Some people have been going forward in 1099-ing a case. It's not a difficult process. It's a process wherein the entire case value at 1099-A is put in, making the clerk the fiduciary, and a 1096, and literally getting the sum certain of the case and discharging it all from that perspective too. So I just throw that in there to say it sounds like you've got a remedy for yourself going, but that could be a third side to a double-edged sword in a sense. Does that make sense? Because there are people doing this, and it is working, by the way. Well, I'm all about what works too. So
I've said for years, I don't care how it's done. I just want to win. What I'm trying to do here in my own case is that for 10 years I've espoused a belief system, and I have resisted to some degree all other types of what I call methodologies or processes.
Right.
I have, my entire scenario is I believe based in the Scripture.
Very
and
good.
It's offer, acceptance, and discharge. Offer, acceptance, and discharge. And even the ratification I had to look at for a long while, but I knew that there was something there because what it does is it forces the claim out in the open. Because, you can ask, do you have a claim against me? And they'll say no. And they'll say, well, then you say, well, do you know anyone who has a claim against me? Well, yeah, the United States. Well, where's the ratification of commencement of that? Well, the U.S. Attorney has it. Great. You look over to the U.S. Attorney and say, do you have the ratification of commencement? I do. May I have your name, please? Well, my name's John Smith. Well, Mr. Smith, thank you. Do you have a claim against me? No, I don't. Well, how can you have ratification of commencement if you don't have a claim?
And that's interesting because for those on the call, folks, you need to understand a claim is living soul versus living soul. What they're going to do is bring charges, and their words mean everything. Harms versus damages, claims versus charges. So they, literally, when as Sam was saying, when he talked about United States having a supposed claim, even a charge, I've been in that scenario as well, and my simple response was, well, can the United States please stand up and speak here today? And then it went further than that, and the U.S. Attorney said, I'm here representing the U.S., and I said, really? I said, can I see the contract wherein you're representing them so I know who I'm dealing with? And that caused a stir, and then at the end of it, I said, right in front of all the people present, sir, have you ever met me before? No, we've never met before. Then it's not possible for us to have a contract. And if all crimes are commercial and where there's no contract, there's no case, let's tell me what we're doing here today. And you want to talk about deer in the headlights. It was deer in the headlights. And that's the whole premise. But so you're bringing a new piece. That's very interesting what you're saying about the ratification of commencement. And so let me ask you, Sam, is that something that would you, when it comes to PSQ and abatement, and I've said this on this call, it works every time, all the time. That's the standard statement you'll hear from me. What I mean by that is that's if you stand on it and follow through. What do you think? Do you believe that this ratification of commencement is something that works every time, all the time, if one were to stand on it?
Well, here's the thing. The other day, I've tried this on 3 or 4 different cases that are ongoing right now. I tried it in a credit card case, a judgment on a breach of contract, and interestingly enough, the judges are acting as usual, like they don't know what the rule is. Okay, and so in fact, the other day, a friend of mine was in court on the breach of judgment or breach of contract case, and the attorney hadn't shown up, and the judge called the attorney and said, we have a hearing here. And my friend didn't know to say, hey, wait a minute, how is that equal protection? If I wasn't here, would you call me? And you can't teach people everything, and
right,
and or every situation. And so I look at this as just a merry-go-round between the ratification of commencement, which is the proof of claim, and do you, sir, presenting the claim, have a claim against me? Where is the injured party? Years ago, Rice McLeod and I down in Dallas, we were trying to help this guy, and he had been subpoenaed by the United States. And Rice says, what do you think we ought to do? And I said, well, why don't we go down and get a dozen subpoenas, and we'll subpoena the handwriting, fingerprints, and photographs of the United States of America. And so that's what we did, and that was in the days where, in fact, after we did this, you couldn't get a blank subpoena anymore. We got a dozen blank subpoenas stamped and signed by the clerk, and we filled them out for the subpoena and the handwriting, fingerprints, and photographs, name, address, and telephone of the United States of America, and went down with a couple other guys to the federal building and started passing them out to every agent we could find, and they were running from us in the halls. And so there was an emergency meeting in Washington, D.C., and there was no more blank subpoenas handed out after that.
So what do you think, Sam? Sam, did you have any indication while all this was going down? Because you've affected the public, and I think that's something you'll admit. Folks, when you go out there and hand out business cards, and commerce is commerce. And Sam, I'm sure you knew what you were doing. When these guys were coming up alongside you, from what I've heard, the affidavit in support of the search warrant, is that somebody that befriended you and became close to you, who actually brought that to the table? Did you know at any point in time? You said in the beginning you trust people, and I'm cool with that. You come out with a good heart, and you try and be wise at the same time. I use the principle of, when I did my radio show, Sam, it was in the middle of the fourth grand jury supposed indictment. And at the end of the day, I went out onto the public because I wanted the ability to say, if you want to know what I think, let me get you the archives to my radio show. I'm not hiding, like when Messiah said, did I not speak openly in the court? So I used that principle. But did you have any idea along the way that something like this might be taking place, or what?
No,
did it just?
it never even crossed my mind, honestly. I mean, and that's where I was, kind of blinded by the whole thing. And you talk about an affidavit on the search warrant or the arrest warrant. There's no affidavit anywhere that I've been presented with for either the search warrant or the arrest warrant. And but we're under the so-called Patriot Act, and I think the other one, mockingly, is called the Victory Act. But be that as it may, here's the thing that I look at. Okay, and I've talked a lot about public and private, not so much lately, but certainly have thought a lot about public and private and all of that, and I've made up my mind that and I say I made up my mind. I'm determined to see this through in number one, the smartest way possible, and number two, I'll use anything that lines up with my belief system. And what I saw in those documents last night, although I did not understand all that I was reading, but then again I didn't study it, I was just perusing it.
Right.
But what I saw of it lined up perfectly with not only the ratification, but do you have a claim and acceptance. And so the reason I got on the call is a friend of mine that pointed me in this direction and sent me the documents, said, you need to be on this call. Tomorrow night I'm going to be on the phone with David Clarence and some of the other boys. And, while I've seen that process, I've never seen it work. I know very well one of the fellows that was in federal court and said to the judge, on whose authority do you appear before me today? I
just love that. I love it. That's just awesome.
Familiar with that story?
What's that?
Are you familiar with that story?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard. I know Rice. I've met Rice several times. The gentleman who took over for him, I knew very well. This
fellow's up in Virginia.
Yeah, I love it. That's something I would say. That's why it makes me laugh.
Yeah, well, he not only said it and lived it. He was told in a closed door meeting with 3 federal judges, including the chief judge, that if you ever get a document requiring you to be in court in the state of Virginia, you call us and send us a document, and we'll take care of it. Don't you ever appear here again.
So you're standing on this. So now take us forward, man. And even if anybody's listening in who's opposed to you, take us forward. And you're going to stand. And when this is implemented, are you going through a notary with this, or what's your procedure?
No. I don't do any of that stuff. I mean,
okay.
My word and my signature, if I can't defend my word and my signature, I mean, about the far as I'll go is certified mail or registered mail.
Okay.
I don't, again, this has to be, I go back to Christ on the cross and in between two criminals. And one looks over at him and says, if you're the Son of God, call down your angels, save yourself and us too. And the other one simply looks over and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That's acceptance. And Christ turned to him and said, today you'll be with me in paradise, and that's discharge. And if it's not that simple, I don't do it.
Well, that's pretty profound, because I like what I just heard. I've never thought of that as a almost commercial process, like you just explained it. But I'm the same way, Sam. The abatement is I know what my mama named me. Matter of fact, she's alive. I'll get an affidavit that she named me what she named me. And anything other than that, we're not moving forward. And again, the big kicker is the subordination of perjury. The subordination of perjury. You know, in that PSQ, I don't know if anybody sent you that, Sam, but if you got that email from me in the beginning, go look at the PSQ process, because what's in there is that you and I have the right not to take the risk or to take the risk of dealing with government. And when we do so, we have the right of ascertaining. So that abatement process of, I know my mama named me, that simple process, when forced into court under anything other than that, is subordination of perjury. You know, the judge can cry contempt all he wants. I'm going to say, not while I'm ascertaining, and certainly you're not going to threaten me and cause me to purge myself. You're suborning perjury, Judge. So what you're doing, kind of like the abatement, seems to work from the outside in. However, if dragged in under threatened arrest, then you've got those simple, and I say yoke is easy, burden is light concepts to stand on, really. And then it becomes like almost similar to what you said. You didn't say it directly, but do what is in your heart to do. I've done my work here, gentlemen. Do what is in your heart to do. And then, you know what? It ends with me. Either I will pray for mercy on you like David did, or I will pray that my enemies are destroyed like David did. That's it. It's all it's about to me. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree. I just look at you know, my first goal is to live at peace with all men, including the government. My second goal is that if and so stated many times in meetings or seminars, if you're going to bring a claim against me, you better have it all in one sock, or I'm going to own you.
I like it. You know, I would love to open up again and let some people ask some questions. But last time I did that, man, I heard music in the background. It was a mayhem. I think I'm afraid to do it again. So I'm going to have to just keep. So moving forward, your procedure is simply that. And let me ask you this. I said something about this, but I want to ask you again. While you were in there, you say you signed everything. Did you do? Folks will want to know, because you hear all the language. I'm probably like you. People talk to me about UCC language, all rights reserved. I'm like, hogwash. Although it's true, I don't use any of that. Is it as simple as it was? You signed in your name, accepted for value, everything. Talk a little bit to people on this call about accepted for value, what that really is doing when you do accepted for value on a document.
Well, the best way I can tell you is that or describe to you is by asking the question, when does title pass? In your mind, when does title pass?
So are you actually asking me that, Sam? Or are you?
No, I am asking you.
When title passes, only is when I give title. But I'm not. You know, I'm probably in.
When you're made an offer, okay, and you accept that offer, when does title pass?
It's probably going to be when I sign.
Well, the title passes at the meeting of the minds. That's why it was important for me to say to the judge, Your Honor, we have a meeting of the minds. Okay? Title passed. Now,
so that's similar, Sam, that's similar to offer, consideration, and acceptance. Title passes when we agree, is what you're saying.
That's correct, at the meeting of the minds.
Okay.
Now the only thing left is to exhibit evidence of the exchange. Now, Federal Reserve notes are not money, but they are evidence of the exchange. Now, in the spiritual world, Christ was the ultimate offer, and he postpaid the accounts backwards, and he prepaid the accounts forward.
Ooh.
Right?
That's good. And say that again, Sam. That's really good. Say that again. Repeat that one.
When Christ died on the cross, he postpaid the accounts backwards, and he prepaid the accounts forward. Okay? And then he said, it is finished, which also translates to say, the account is closed. All right? Now, when we look back on the event of his death and resurrection as an offer, and we accept that offer, okay, we we are now the holder in due course of a contract with Almighty God. And nothing can separate us from that contract. Now, the only thing left is what? Evidence of the exchange. So your so-called Christian walk that the church likes to heap on you with guilt and shame, because you should do this and you should do that, your Christian walk and doing good to your fellow man, because the two commandments are, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. That is the exhibition or evidence of the exchange. Follow me?
Yeah, I do. I like it. I'm letting you go.
Okay. Now, acceptance for value, there is no money. When Roosevelt took all the property in HGR 192 and its ancillary documents, where it says all property belongs to the state and we're mere users, and use must be in accordance with law and within the necessity of the state. We here spend all our time trying to be owners. Guess what? If you don't own it, they can't take it. If you do own it, they can take it. And the scripture says that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So it doesn't belong to me. I'm just a steward of what he's given me. So when the government makes the statement that that all property belongs to the state, and they take in all the gold and all the assets, they also have to take in the liabilities. But then what they did is they said, well, let's take it one step further, and we'll really get them in debt, and we'll issue them Federal Reserve notes so that they have something that they can pass around as evidence of the exchange. Well, Federal Reserve notes are the private property of the Federal Reserve Bank, and therefore a tax exacted for using the privilege of using Federal Reserve notes as evidence of the exchange is why we have taxes. Then the Federal Reserve can go one step further, and they can expand by printing enormous sums of what they call money, which is no such thing, and then you have inflation, and now we're in a period of deflation. You can somewhat control inflation. You can't control deflation at all. Well, so when you have an offer from any government entity or corporation or anyone for that matter, and you make an acceptance, title is passed, and you're the holder of that offer. You're the holder of that contract. In fact, you're the holder in due course, and you direct it wherever it needs to go. So then you walk into court and said, I've accepted this matter for value, for the value that you state it is, or whatever value that you want on it. Now, who's not adjusting my account? Who is it here that's refusing to adjust my account because evidently they have a claim against me, and if they have a claim against me, I want to see it, and by the way, while you're at it, give me the ratification of commencement of the claim. Or go away.
Very good. Very good. You know, Stan, I'm afraid, again, I know there's so many people texting me wanting to ask questions, so I'm going to...
Well, open it up.
Well, here's the problem, though, Sam. Last time I did, I'm a rookie on TalkShoe. Folks, let me do it this way. I heard radios. I think I heard some tractor trailers in the background. I think I heard a couple parakeets. I don't know what the heck I heard, but I'm going to unmute people, and I'm going to ask you guys, just the minute I unmute, I'm going to count to 5, hit *6, because somebody had a radio blaring. I mean, it was loud. So if somebody's saying don't do it, I've got all these people Skyping me right now. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, if I can take questions, guys. A lot of you guys are Skyping me. If somebody's got questions they want to ask, go ahead and ask questions. But anyways, all right, Sam. So that's I'm definitely glad you're out. How you feeling? How's your wife doing, by the way?
Oh, she's fine.
Yeah, my wife's
obviously a little traumatized and upset by it all. I mean, we had 25 people traipsing through our house with automatic weapons.
Unbelievable. You know, it's funny because at the fourth grand jury, Sam, I'll never forget, you know, in my quest to move forward and do what I was doing, I'll never forget the night. It becomes overwhelming at times. I mean, it's a formidable foe we take on, Sam, and at the end of it all, by grand jury 4, when you know they took a juror from grand jury 3 and stack him and put him as the foreman of grand jury 4, you know they want your butt, you know, and that's what happened with me.
Absolutely.
So you know, the bottom line is when that came forward, I was really, really considering the fact that my Father in heaven was going to take me away from my family in a place that I didn't, you know, necessarily want to be, but I was trusting. So I'll never forget, you know, breaking down at my wife's feet, just saying, Father, if you're going to do this, do it. You know, I'd rather just go forward and do what you're going to do. But it's a process. And my wife said to me, and I'll never forget it, I said, you know, if they come, hon, I'm not giving in. I'm not giving in. I'll be sitting there until he breaks the chains open and releases me. And she looked at me and she said, and I don't want you to give in. And that's very powerful. So you have a son as well, Sam? It's a wife, son, and you have any more kids?
I have 6 children.
6? Oh my goodness, you're a busy man.
Only one left at home. But let me just interject here, if I could, Mike. My years and years ago, when I was first, in fact, 10 years ago this month, when it was this month that I was learning about acceptance and redemption and whatever you want to call it. And I was up in Montana visiting with a guy who allegedly knew something about it and was kind enough to give me his flip chart that he had used for a seminar that he had just done. And I didn't really care for his scriptural or spiritual position, which was basically non-existent. But I was laying in a little camp trailer with a good friend of mine back then who smoked like a chimney and cussed like a sailor. And there wasn't anything spiritual about him. And I've told this story about every meeting I've ever done. So if any of you have heard it, I'm sorry. But, you know, there's one thing that you said there, and the reason that I just told you what I told you about the Scripture is that my deal is that I honor my God and my belief system in every meeting that I do, and I do it in this way. And Butch was the fellow's name, and he was down in the other end of the camp trailer, and there was just a light bulb on over his head, and he was laying in the bed smoking a cigarette and watching the smoke go up. And I expressed to him my fear that we were one or two of maybe 10 people in the entire United States at that time that knew anything about acceptance for value, and I was just beginning to get an inkling of what it meant and what the potentials of it were. And I expressed my fear to him, and he never misses a beat. He takes a cigarette out of his mouth and he's hanging on to it, and he points up and he says, "Well, I've always looked at it like this." He says, "Until he gives his okay, nobody can touch you. When he gives his okay, nobody can help you. And when he gives his okay, it's okay."
Very good, very good. Couple questions have come in, so I'm just going to ask them exactly like I'm getting them. What's the next court hearing for Mr. All Caps Sam?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that what is scheduled is towards the end of April.
Okay.
They emptied my bank accounts, and I had a fairly large amount of money, of other people's money, of things that we were getting ready to do for those folks. And so one of the first things I have to do is go get my paperwork squared away, because some of it's still in Las Vegas with my personal effects, and I have to literally get claims put in and go recover those funds before before they set up their next sting operation with them.
So you've got actually people you were doing work with who are now put in a position where they've obviously seized accounts, and you know, folks, the reason being is because, you know, people say my bank account, my this, my that. Well, it's their numbers, so it's a difficult game. I use Sam Joseph as the example. He wasn't a purist in the sense of he turned away from Pharaoh's system. He learned how to master Pharaoh's system. But when it comes to those bank accounts and whatnot, what's going to be your procedure there? What do you think you're going to be able to do?
I'm going to go, for one thing, I have a UCC from 10 years ago filed on everything that I have and everything that I do, including my wife and children. And, I know very well, the way to go about stating a claim. Diversified Metals taught us very well what we're supposed to do. And so I've got to go state the claim, and now I'll probably have to go argue the claim. And again, I'm going to use ratification of commencement as the basis for, for making the claim, and that they don't have ratification, but I do.
So it was stated in the I believe on the web. Did the supposed judge make a plea for all caps artwork, or what happened there when that was done?
Yeah, he put in the plea, and as soon as I put in my pleading, of course, I'll undo all that. But my goal at the time was to go home and take care of my wife. I handled it. And I've been around the block enough times with enough different people to know, or at least believe, what I can do and what I can't do. And if I'm not smart enough to undo it, then I'm going to pay the price, my friend.
Right.
And everybody needs to understand that. I'm not standing here on an ego saying, well, I'm Sam Davis and nothing's going to happen to me. That's stupid.
Okay, well, I've got, here we go. Lots of questions, man. It's hard to read all these. Oh, hey, listen, here's one from a friend of mine. Once you're in, and let me ask you this, once you're, let's say, detained, ratification of commencement, once somebody's brought into the system and being held without really charges and or arraignment, or maybe with arraignment and charges, I'm going to throw out a name that I'm pretty sure you know, Shane. Like, when that goes forth in a situation where somebody's already, and by all means, the name I use, Shane, folks, there are guys out there who just try anything and really don't know why they're trying stuff. So at the end of the day, things can happen if you're just throwing stuff in the wind, because it's a very powerful system. What do you think about that? Is that
I actually have this pleading in on him, along with a writ of habeas corpus.
Right.
And it's been a real battle to get him to sit still and leave it alone. But I've been in fairly consistent touch. I need to get an email over to his dad and tell him that I'm okay, and so on and so forth. But the purpose of putting in a pleading, or whatever you want to call it, your document, I'm just using pleading as a generic term, in general term. Whenever you put that in, if you don't go and prosecute that paper, and without prosecuting it, you just start dropping in another document and another document and another document, you're wasting your time, because you may have gone by the very thing that would work. But you don't want to go to court. Nobody wants to go to court. I'm not afraid of going to court. I think that I look at it this way, and this is kind of strange, but, years ago I got a ticket for driving on British West Indies license plates and registration. And that was my first experience in jail when they convicted me. But that was also the learning experience that set me down this path when the judge said, Mr. Davis, if you mention your constitutional rights one more time in my courtroom, I'm going to put you in jail for contempt of court. And I said that to the FBI agent, and they both looked at me incredulously, and you said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, no, that's what started me down this path. What would you do? And the one agent of 22 years looked at me and said, I'd go find out what was going on. I said, there you go. So, in this whole scenario, I got a $300 one night in jail college education. then I built on that experience and other experiences and other experiences and other. I watched some folks in Texas in jail in Seattle when we put in an affidavit of specific negative averment. I watched a judge almost have a stroke in court over a 30-minute period, hold the man in contempt 4 times, for which he apologized every time. And 2 weeks later, when they were extradited to Texas, they were met at the bus by a representative from the governor's office and handed a pardon for the last 12 and a half years of anything they may have done wrong in Washington State, and their names were expunged from the records of Washington State, all over one piece of paper.
So what about now, as far as some of the, Mr. Rice and Mr. I believe his name is Hal, correct? How are they doing? Are they following the same procedure? Are they going to be going?
Oh, Sean is far more versed in the some of the forms and procedures and things that you've talked about. 91, 90, 28, all those different things. And Harold Mr. Call, he's just kind of out there. I know Sean expressed to him that he would help him. Of course, I expressed to Harold that I would help him. I haven't got to speak yet again with Jan Lindsay, the former IRS agent, but I consider him a close personal friend and will do whatever I can do to help him if he wants my help. So, all of this stuff, it was reported here in Idaho. They put my name up on TV and listed all the charges underneath my name. And of course, that, most of my family, most of my sisters and my one brother live in Boise. And so, now I'm sure I've embarrassed my family, but that's the way it goes. My mother, bless her heart, lives in Portland, but she hears about it. And it doesn't bother me because I know the truth. It doesn't bother the other guys because they know the truth. They're doing okay. They just, they're just trying to put their lives back together. I know that Jan, when they came in on Jan, he was standing and walking across his living room, and he has a 10-foot glass sliding doors. And he saw them coming across the yard, and of course he knew immediately what was going on, and he went to open the door, and they commanded him to step back. And so he steps back a couple feet, and as they approach his glass, they turn their gun butts around and bash his windows. And flying glass cuts Jan on his face and on his arms. And there's flying glass all over his carpet. For what? So 3 or 4 guys can get their jollies from kicking in his glass.
Right.
This is a man that was in the FBI for 25 years.
Unbelievable. Hey, I've got somebody who just wrote me in, Sam. It says somebody's got the actual ratification of commencement in on a foreclosure, and the court's asked her to make an appointment to go to court, and she's not sure what to do. What would you do in that situation?
Well, say that again. She put in the ratification
on a foreclosure issue, and they've actually, it seems, invited her by appointment to go to court, and she's not sure what to do on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you all my email. Okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's B as in boy, L as in Larry, D as in David, BLD, R as in Raymond, M as in Mary, T as in Tom, N as in Nancy, at fiberpipe, FIBERPIPE.net. BL is an acronym for Boulder Mountain without the vowels. Boulder Mountain at fiberpipe.net. And I've already prepared a couple of scripts. I haven't worked on a mortgage yet, but that's very simple. And any time that you're going to do this, you have to do it expecting to go to court. And if you can do it without going to court in your process, Mike, that's great. You really got to know what you're doing, I think.
Well, that's why I say I think think that makes sense because if I'm going to really take a hard look at this and look at this along with what I've got, I think both going forward enables you not to go in and still have the same effect, and that's the thing that I think that needs to be considered. Because if I tell you if I beat down your misnomer and to abatement and you don't amend your writ, then you've got a double-edged sword there. You've got your position and the position of the name.
But you just said the key word there, the misnomer. Okay, what is the real party in interest? Who is the real party in interest? And,
right.
And so we're right in the rule that talks about real party in interest or the misnomer. Okay, it says right in there that every action shall be brought in the name of the real party in interest, and no matter shall be dismissed after objection until the ratification of commencement is produced.
Well, there you go. That's good stuff. You know what? I got more people asking lots of questions. I'm sure a lot of people want to talk to you. What are you going to be doing, Sam? Are you kind of going to slow down on the seminars and all that, or have they said anything about any of that?
No, and nobody's asked me to do one. When Ms. Marty in Northern California, I was there when the IRS came in on her, so when I went to Orlando to do a seminar, I had 25 people show up. Well, I only lost about $3,000 on that deal, and I don't even charge very much money. But, I can't afford right now, I can't afford to do anything. If people bought my DVDs or asked me to come and speak, I would come and speak. I don't go anywhere without somebody putting together a meeting and asking me to come. I've never asked anybody to come and speak. It just doesn't work that way. I've never asked anybody to let me help them. I've said to people, and the way that this is done is, if you want my help, you have to ask me. No, I don't charge you. But if I can't pay my phone bill, I can't talk to you because my DSL is hooked to my phone line. And if I can't pay my power bill, I can't turn on my computer. So I don't charge people to help them.
Yeah, that's good. What do you think about a little bit about Teresa? There's a lot of people on this call who know procedure very well on OID and felt like there was a lot of mistakes made. Can you talk a little bit about how you felt about that?
Well, yeah, sure. I don't know anything about the procedure. Okay? She's a professional tax return preparer. She relied on two people's information to prepare tax returns, and she stuck her entire life and her neck out on the line. And for a procedure that didn't work, in the complaint that I read yesterday, the government has issued $26 million in refunds on a procedure that other people are saying, well, it's wrong. Well, if it's wrong, that's fine. Come on, folks. I've always said in every meeting I've ever done, the government never has to worry about us. We eat our own. Here's a woman that's a professional woman that's been a tax preparer for over 20 years, sticks her neck out because she believes a couple people that she's listened to, and starts preparing these returns, and lo and behold, guess what? People start getting refunds. Well, then, the government figures out that, hey, the cat's out of the bag. We need to do something. I said back in September when I first heard about her, I said to a friend of mine, who, matter of fact, happens to be an attorney in Chicago, I said, the only thing they need to do to shut this operation down is go in on Teresa Marty. Guess what happened? When they went in on her, a good bit of the country ran for cover. There hasn't been one person besides myself and one other guy that has really come to her aid and said, what can I do? I'm writing a pleading for her to respond to this civil injunction complaint, and I think we're going to blow them right out of the water.
Yeah, well, if you notice in the complaint, it's actually when people ask me what I thought about it, all I could say was comical. That was my only response, because the reality of it.
There isn't one violation anywhere. There's not
Exactly.
There's not one code violation cited anywhere.
Exactly. And so for those of you listening in, take heed to that, because at that point, with all those Federal Reserve notes paid out, listen, Internal Revenue Service doesn't pay out millions of dollars just to go get it back by seizing accounts. The process is a legitimate process, and at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, all they can do is try and put fear into people doing this. Because, Sam, a little bit about that, AHJR 192, we got Uniform Commercial Code. I've told people all the time, even in their system, it has integrity. Not that it's an honest system of integrity, but the system itself has integrity only because the remedies are available. I'm not sure how much longer we have to get remedies when they're, I've said we're going to walk into a comply or else environment here in a few years, I believe. What do you think about that? How far do you think we're off to?
I think that's closer than we think, and I also think that if we don't get, and I'll just be blunt, if we don't get off our asses and quit fighting amongst ourselves and get on with this, it's going to be real quick. I've always viewed this. The only difference between today and 10 years ago with a 1099 OID. The only difference is 10 years ago we were asking for it. Today we furnish it. I've been asking for a 1099 OID and 1099 INT for 9 years in my correspondence. Now, which brings up another point. If I've done all these bad things, why did they have to entrap me to charge me with something?
Exactly. In other words, like it said on the web and everything, all these checks that you negotiate. When I read that, it's ridiculous. It was absolute. I don't even know you, Sam, but I've heard a lot of good things about you. But I said, this is such garbage. It's like the machine they feed is such garbage. I'm like, there's no way that this man did this. It's borderline just, hey, take these blank checks and just go start cutting checks on them, will you? Come on. I mean, that's
Well, I saw the checks and I just looked at that incredulously. I never touched them. I was in a room with them once, and that's when I really learned that they were actually engaged in what I considered a criminal enterprise. And, I have no excuse. It was against a bank, and there's no bigger criminals on the planet than the banks.
Well, when they sent you the wire, though, so again, what did you think the wire was coming in for again?
Well, it was coming in to be moved from my account to their account.
Okay. Maybe so. In other words, all they talked about almost $600,000. So you're saying, how did that go forward? What happened there?
Well, all they did was they told me that they had these funds. They moved these funds supposedly from cash into their bank account.
Okay. In other words, they had it under their bed and they wanted to put it in the bank.
That's
okay.
right, and they figured out some way to do that. Okay. And so then they wired the funds to me in my company. Okay.
With the intent on doing what? Just structuring, or what were they going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
With the intent of just moving them through me to another account, a different account that they had set up, so that they could go buy real estate or whatever it was that they were going to go do.
And so, folks, take heed to that. The basic of what they're saying is, if somebody's since the time they were 10 years old, all their birthday money and everything, put it under their bed, bringing that into an environment like a bank, it's got to be fraud, because people can't do that. And that's all part of that fear machine, where they want you to believe these things. Like, I had somebody ask me the other day, well, if I give my son $100,000 out of my trust fund, am I allowed to give him that much? And I looked at him and I said, what? Who gets to tell you otherwise? I said, Genesis, birds plants, trees, animals. That's all that man's given dominion over. No man can write laws over another man. And so that thing that they do, it's exactly the thing they want you to do. But by all means, and many would say, Sam, entrapment. I mean, my goodness, if there's no, I mean, what they did there was purposed. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, number one, Judas lives today. Okay, I mean, if you want to, I guess the only way I can describe it is absolutely betrayed. But then again, I was stupid enough to go and do these things for them. I've not denied that. I won't deny that. The end result is I don't know what will be, but the purpose of coming on the call was to and we can do that over the next few days, is to talk about these forms and how they work and what this means and what that means, because I'm all ears. But the reality of it is that they have to stoop so low to frame a 67-year-old man with a little broken part that they ask him to make, because he's the leader of a group called the Lawman Group in Las Vegas, a group of 15 to 20 people that have breakfast together and coffee on Wednesday mornings at a local restaurant. And that is such a threat to them that they have to take this man out in this way. And my case is a little bit more elaborate because they know how I feel about the banking system. And so they take my feelings and my viewpoint, and they exploit that into a criminal, to the point where I commit what allegedly is a criminal act. And thankfully, a friend of mine pointed out something to me a couple days ago. He says, Sam, how can you launder something that doesn't exist?
There you go. That's dead on. In other words, there were those who would say, and I've been questioned this way 1,000 times, sir, do you pay taxes? And I giggle and say, are you trying to trick me? Well, no, I'm just asking you if you pay taxes. With Federal Reserve notes, that's pretty funny. You're trying to trick me. And see, they want to entrap you into those kind of arguments where, I'm sorry, according to the rules that govern you, a Federal Reserve note is nothing but an IOU. So are you trying to trick me by asking me if I can pay debt with debt? And you see how that's a completely different environment than, I don't pay 16th Amendment, yada, yada, yada. No, the reality is, I wish I could, but you took my gold and silver.
I never argue the law. There is.
That's right. Well, supposed law, yeah. There are rules. Yeah. Exactly. Well, listen, Sam, I don't know, again, I don't know how TalkShoe works all that well, and I've got everybody muted so nobody gets to say anything, but let me pray for you, my friend, and I want to have further talks with you, and I've got your email, and I will get a hold of you. I know people who've got your number, so I'll get a hold of you, but I want to take the next few minutes here, and if everybody on this call could just, I don't want to offend anybody on this call if you're not of, somebody who is a praying person, but listen, here's a guy who certainly is trying to fight for your rights and just the basic freedoms of being able to do what he needs to do in life without offending others. So, Father, I just come before you and lift up Sam and his family. I pray for a fullness of angels that just surround his family, Father, a legion of angels, Father, that just cover him, that you would just, this is an appointed time, Father. As Sam said, no man can harm him unless you approve it, Father, just like Job, just like all of us, Father. So we're going to trust that this time and season is for him and for his family. And yes, Father, we do pray, Yeshua, your son's blood over his family entirely, Father, that this is covered, this is anointed, and this is glorious even. I know personally, Father, that there were times I had to find joy in the thought of prison because I had to believe it was going to be you doing it. And if that's true, Father, you cover all things. You've got a hope and a future for us, so we can rejoice no matter what. We have no reason to fear. The fear of man is sin, Father. So give him wisdom beyond even his years, Father. Give him incredible wisdom. Just lift him up on high. Anoint him. Anoint his wife, his 6 children, Father, and just let him sleep peacefully at night. And whoever's supposed to come alongside him, Father, that people would stand, Father, because if it were them, they would want the same. So give him just a wealth of resources, finances, whatever he needs to obtain this victory. And we praise you, Father. We praise you for who you are, and we know that through suffering your Son was made perfect. So we can rejoice in these times and move forward. And we lift it all up in Yeshua's name. All right, folks, so there we go. Hey, Sam, listen, man, real honor to have you here. I know the recording, folks. I believe it's going to be the same URL I sent everybody. At the end of the day, I will find a way to get everybody that link for this recording. I think it's right on TalkShoe under the same URL number. But Sam, thanks for coming, man. I will be in touch. I will be in touch with you, and thanks for your story. And you stand firm, man. You got the victory.
There's no question about that. Thank you much for having me and letting me talk. And I kind of wasn't expecting that. I was kind of expecting to listen to you, but that's okay. And I really appreciate your prayers and everyone out there's prayers. And you know, we will prevail, and God will see us through. And our country's in grave danger. And you know, you remember the line in A Few Good Men. You said grave danger. Is there any other kind?
I like the one in. I'll use a Braveheart one. Every man dies, but not every man truly lives. So we'll end with that. Hey, Sam, I'll be in touch with you, man. Right. Be blessed and sleep well. And we'll talk to you all later. And next week at the same time, same place, folks. Thanks, everybody. Good night.